Good morning. This is a reading from the book of Isaiah. Hear what God's Spirit is saying to you. Do not remember the former things or consider the things of old. I'm about to do a new thing. New, now it springs forth. Do you not perceive it? I will make a way in the wilderness and rivers in the desert. The wild animals will honor me, the jackals and the ostriches, for I give water in the wilderness, rivers in the desert, to give drink to my chosen people, the people whom I farmed for myself so they might declare my praise. Here ends the reading of words that give us insight on God. May God grant us the wisdom and courage for interpretation. God bless.
I am so grateful that the board of ProgressiveChristianity.org is able to be in San Diego from the cold regions of the earth that they came here from and are able to spend this weekend planning. And so Mark had said, "Oh, Caleb, we'll get to hear you preach this weekend." And I said, "You could, but that sounds like a horrible waste of talent because look at all these theological resources we have here, and we ought to hear from you all." So ProgressiveChristianity.org was formed in the mid-90s as a Center for Progressive Christianity and has been defining the conversation about the progressive Christian movement for all of these years. And so we've got some incredible history with this organization, and the progressive Christian movement is going in new and exciting directions, and we're going to talk a little bit about that today. And I've also asked Pastor Marcella to join our conversation as well. So I'm going to let them all, they've all got mics, so I'm going to let them introduce themselves, and then we'll hear from a board member who isn't able to be here in the sanctuary with us today, but joined us virtually. So Roger, why don't you start?
Sure, I'm Roger Woolsey. I'm a pastor in the United Methodist tradition. I'm currently serving a church in Fruita, Colorado, right near Grand Junction on the far western side of Colorado. I wrote a book a few years ago that you might have heard of, Kissing Fish, Christianity for People Who Don't Like Christianity. And so you can relate to that, yeah. And there's a Facebook page that sort of has a life of its own. A lot of folks don't even know there's a book, but the Kissing Fish book page is a place where a lot of progressive Christians converse and challenge each other and inspire each other, and you might want to know about that. So.
Oh, I've got my mic.
Oh, you have
That's
your
good.
own mic.
Yes, thank you. Y'all know me. I'm Pastor Marcella Salgado Solorio. Yes, I'm associate minister here at University Christian Church. I'm also co-founder and co-leader of SD United, which is an open and inclusive youth group here in San Diego.
I'm Mark Sandlin. I'm the president and co-executive director of Progressive Christianity, co-founder of the Christian Left. Well, I invite you all to come and find us on Facebook. It's a great place to discuss progressive politics from a very decidedly Christian point of view. And I'm a Presbyterian minister at Presbyterian Church of the Covenant in Greensboro, North Carolina. And while you are cold today, I feel very warm here. I appreciate this weather very much.
Good morning, I am Reverend Larry J. Morris III. I was actually ordained in UCC in 2019, so it feels good to be back here with everybody. And so I have, I've been busy. I haven't just been sitting on my ordination. So I am the executive director and lead pastor of the Inclusive Collective, which is a campus ministry in the Chicagoland area. And so our purpose is to fuel young adults through Jesus-rooted soul work. I'm also a PhD student in the African American and Preaching program at Christian Theological Seminary. So I appreciate the support of the church here with that work as well. And I also do spiritual direction. So like I said, I have been busy since you all ordained me. I haven't just been sitting on it.
Thanks for not slacking, Larry. I also want to say a special word of thanks to Deb Grady, who is our administrator of ProgressiveChristianity.org, and grateful that you are here today as well. Dr. Sharon Jacob is a professor at Claremont School of Theology. She was not able to join us in person, but I'm going to let her introduce herself and get us started in thinking about the future of the progressive Christian movement. Let's take a look.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sharon Jacob, and I am one of the board members at progressivechristianity.org. And I'm here to talk about what I see from my perspective, the future of progressive Christianity. In a context where religious nationalism is on the rise in various contexts, not just in the United States, but around the world, I think it is important for movements like progressive Christianity to provide a counter narrative. What movements like progressive Christianity do or resist is they highlight multiple voices, multiple perspectives, and a message of inclusion, message of solidarity, message of bridge building, and message against the racism, the homophobia, the xenophobia, the sexist, the misogynist nature in which our world is heading currently. Progressive Christianity also, is just gives people the choice to read texts for their own, to make up their own minds, and to use their own experiences and their own voice while interpreting these texts. This is very important. It is not just one narrative, but it is multiple perspectives and multiple narratives that can coexist side by side, that push against one another, that are in dialogue with one another, that draw from one another, that are inspired from one another, and that also provide inspiration to one another. The hope for me from a movement like progressive Christianity is that we need more movements that promote peace and social justice for all, that also promotes in recognizing the humanity of all people. And that's where I hope that we are headed. I do think that's where we are headed, but all in all, we need a counter narrative that just allows people to recognize that there are multiple ways of thinking, multiple ways of being, and they can find homes. They can find home or be at home or belong in a movement which is called progressive Christianity. Thank you again.
An interesting thing about Sharon is she studied under Dr. Tracy West, who is the sister of our artist in residence, Bill Wright, which is a fun connection. So we are a progressive congregation. That's a way we identify ourselves. That's in our mission, our vision, our core values, and we talk about that a lot. But before we get too deeply into anything, I thought I'd throw this out there. What even is progressive Christianity? Could you all just, whoever wants to take that on, or if you want to bounce that back, what is it?
I'll start just by saying I've always really disliked the label of progressive Christianity. For me, I've always felt like progressive Christianity should be, it's an awkward way of putting it, but originist Christianity, where we're trying so hard and desperately to get back to what were the original intentions of the teachings of Jesus? Who are we supposed to be? Progressive feels like it's pushing everything into the future, which is great in terms of we are trying to create new stuff like the scripture said today. Behold, I'm about to do a new thing. But I think that it allows too many people to say, you're doing a new thing and it's not what Christianity is, rather than saying, all we're trying to do is strip back all of the junk that's piled up on top of what Jesus' intentions were. So for me, that's progressive Christianity is actually trying to get back to the roots of what Christianity really is and lead us towards breaking down the barriers that give the false impression that we are somehow separate from each other.
I agree. Good job, Mark. I too have felt uncomfortable when I walk around, I'm like, oh, I'm a progressive Christian, like as if it's anything different than what Christianity really is. Unfortunately, we do have to give that disclaimer because the word Christian has been hijacked, and not just in recent decades. I mean, this is centuries upon centuries of hijacking, and so yeah, progressive Christianity is trying to strip everything, from like Constantine on, just taking us back to Jesus's original message, Jesus's original calling to us. And there are, some major points. And I think one of the biggest ones, my favorite one, is definitely that of love and inclusion, where everyone is welcome. That is, I think, one of the core, if we filter everything through love and kindness and inclusion, then we're able to get to a real theology and Jesus's theology and what he taught us. So I think that in a nutshell is progressive Christianity. Obviously, we have our major points of theology, of progressive theology, but that I think is the core.
I mean, I agree with what you all said. So I think it reminds me to always look at the margins, right? Who is being left out of our understanding of Christianity, and to include them. I think that is the work in the ministry of Jesus Christ. And so progressive is like, who's on the margin? There's always some community or some folks on the margin. Then how do we include them? Include them in Christianity? They're already included, but how do we amplify their voices and allow them to also have space and to learn from folks who are marginalized as well?
And I'll just echo that I fully agree with everything I just heard, and I'll just bring us back to the scripture of Isaiah 43, where there's this prophetic vision of, don't remember the things of old, I'm about to do a new thing. And there's a certain beauty in that. Yeah, let's shed the baggage of the past and move forward. And it could very well be said that progressive Christianity ultimately should be called conservative Christianity, because it's conserving the very things that made this a gift to the world in the first place: love, inclusion, justice, restorative justice, reconciliation, loving kindness, mercy. That's what we want to conserve. It's simply going back to what we are meant to do and be. So a way to nutshell this is it's a shift from a focus on the religion about Jesus to the focus of the religion of Jesus. What was his way of being, his way of interacting, and how did that show up in how he treated people, how he treated himself, how he communed with creation and everything. One of the things that I think distinguishes progressive Christianity from that which we all know we don't want to be associated with, we're fully embracing of contemporary science. We don't see a problem with science and religious faith. We don't see a problem, therefore, with homosexuality and different genders and expressions. There's 1,500 animal species that have homosexual partnerships, many lifelong pairings. Why would that be different for us? We also really, we're about embracing how God is at work in so many ways, and we don't think we have a monopoly on God and how God is at work in the world. We have a more humble way of playing in the sandbox with others. And we will happily, well, how is God showing up for you and working in your life? And we learn from them, and we have a more humble way of interacting where we don't even try to go have an agenda of converting people. And because of that lack of agenda, some people might go, well, now you're kind of interesting, because I don't feel an agenda coming from you. That's part of the way we do it. Does that help? Yeah.
It does. And, I love, you all must be pastors, because there are lots of references to tie in the scripture there, and I appreciate that. That was very helpful. And so that's very helpful to help us kind of understand what progressive Christianity is. I'm curious, what kind of work you've seen progressive Christianity doing? Like, what have we done well as progressive Christians? What have we not done so well? And maybe what should we be focusing on in the future? Whoever wants that one.
I'll start again. What we have done, and this is just, there's so many answers to that question. So thank you for such a broad question. One of the things we've done incredibly well is deconstruct bad, harmful theology that hurts and marginalizes and separates people. And I'm going to keep this really brief. What we need to do more work on is reconstruction. A simple example of that is we've done a very good job at deconstructing our understanding of the afterlife, of the idea that there's a heaven and that there's a hell. We've gone back to the scripture and really been able to break down why maybe that's not even what was trying to be said here. It's time, though, to work on reconstructing, to give for, particularly in the case of what is the afterlife, there is some comfort in that old understanding of what the afterlife is. What does progressive Christianity, what have we reconstructed to offer instead of it? What is our new understanding? And I think there's lots of places, topics within progressive Christianity where we've done this really wonderful job of coming from a very intellectual and experiential perspective to this text. But what are we going to do next with it? How do we reconstruct it in a meaningful way? And we're doing some of that, but I think there's a lot more work to be done there.
I think one of the things we've done well is to hold space for questions, right? A lot of people that I work with, and even in my own, life of faith, is we have questions about the divine, about God, about justice, right? And so I think we've done a really good job, holding space for questions. And then I think, to kind of get on your point of this reconstruction piece, I believe there are communities who have already done this reconstructive work, right? And so we talk about marginalized identities and marginalized communities. There are Black folks, Indigenous folks, queer people who have already done some of the reconstruction work. And so I wonder what it would be like to lift up their voices, right? To learn from other communities who, in some ways have already kind of begun that work. And so, I think we're in some ways are moving in that direction. But we can learn from folks who are already kind of there.
I think, I completely agree. Queer theology in particular is doing an incredible job at putting back together all these old pieces in a way that is really valuable for bringing us together and showing us the places that we've fallen very short. I completely agree.
I think one thing, progressive Christianity, it's not new. It's not a new concept. Or I think of organizations that have existed for a long time. And the one that stands out to me, just because I was raised in a household that read Sojourners magazine and who, my dad used Jim Wallace's books in a lot of the courses that he taught. That's an organization that has been around for a very long time, started during the Vietnam War. You think of, the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., we hear about him in school, and as if being a reverend was his side gig, and being this activist was this, separate thing. And it really isn't. He was an activist because of his faith. And I think just highlighting that more and more, I know for a long time I was very cautious in telling people that I followed a Christian tradition because they assumed all this negative stuff about me. But I think, the direction that progressive Christianity has headed, I think, we are being louder and trying to take the microphone more and more and trying to, be out in public and be loud about our, what we believe and being in spaces as ministers and as progressive Christians, being in these activist spaces and giving progressive Christianity and just, Christianity in general, just a voice. So I think more and more, I love, seeing that we're kind of shedding some of the baggage and just going out there and declaring loud and proud who we are and standing on the shoulders of those that have been trying to share that message, but maybe didn't have the microphone in the same way that we have now with social media and online presence and that sort of stuff.
I think progressive Christianity has done a really good job of helping people feel comfortable having beliefs that they know that they've had for a long time but didn't know that they could actually believe and still be a Christian. I don't think of God as some man in the sky looking down on us, more like a field of love that I experience. Less Jesus needing to die and bleed everywhere to be our salvation, to following his way. I am the way, the truth, and the life. His way of being, that way of compassion, of restorative justice, of loving kindness. That way, if we live that way, we're going to experience wholeness. That's salvation. That's how we experience salvation. It doesn't have to be the stuff that's so off-putting for so many people. Now, where I think we can do better, we already have the tools to do it. The groundwork is there. We take contemporary science seriously, which means we care about human aggravated global warming, which means we care what the scientists are telling us. And we care about how we have to step things up. There are 8 billion people on the planet. Christianity is currently the largest religion. If we can influence, if 5% of us, 10% of us, 20% of us can come around to embracing stewardship of God's creation as integral to the faith, not just some side thing, but integral to being Christian, well, we can save the planet. God can use us to save the planet. So that's a big part of what I think we can be doing next.
So I would love to hear much more from them, but maybe Save the Planet is a great place to stop because that is what we hope that our faith does, right? Transform the world. So we are grateful to all of you. Let's give them all a round of applause. Thank you for being here with us today. Mark's got a book, Progressive Prayers for Progressive People. Roger's got his Kissing Fish book that he mentioned, but Roger, you've also got another book coming out.
Yeah, a new book coming out in April, Discovering Fire, Spiritual Practices That Transform Lives.
So check those out as well. Friends, let's give them another round of applause. And you all can return to your seats. Thank you so much.